and everything just kind of moves past past the straw rather quickly. So you'll get that effect. You'll get the whole push up. So imagine you're pressing down. Did anybody get that? Where they felt any push up on the skin and then it just kind of deflated underneath it. So you'll get that effect sometimes. The water balloon with a hole in it, that's really just a slow deflation. It's most likely you'll get one little hole in it, just like a water balloon. And where that fluid is now starting to make its way out, but it's so slow that you'll actually feel it just kind of deflate, just like a water balloon. Change between vibration or no vibration to vibration. So changing back and forth. Sometimes if there's fluid involved, and you're pressing down past the fluid into the harder stuff below it, and you put a tuning fork there, a lot of times that tuning fork vibration will go right on past your fingers. And you'll never be able to feel vibration. If that fluid tends to move away enough, you might go from no vibration to vibration. That's an indicator that something's changed. Hard and tight, which most of you I think would feel that there's hardness. We do feel that the hardness is overpressurization. Lumps and bumps we think is fascial restrictions and compartmentalization of fascia. We think that hardness is just a more spread out fluid that just kind of keeps everything compact. It hasn't quite made it into a free-flowing area, but it's just hard and tight. So when that turns to soft and squishy, so you're pressing down and it's kind of tough, and then you put the tuning fork there, and then all of a sudden it turns into squishy. And that's an indicator that something's working right. Bumpy and lumpy, and now it's smooth. And then also when you have a return of fluid flow, meaning your blood flow. When blood flow starts to come back, some of you have experienced that when Bobby Joe had worked on you, where all of a sudden it went from feeling really cold and kind of pale looking to the skin, and then when that blood flow starts to come back in, you know now that you've released enough pressure. And you also should expect that where you have cardiovascular system, you're also going to have the lymphatics and the nerves running through the same spots, really in close proximity to each other. So when you start to unrestrict the blood flow, you're also unrestricting the lymphatics and the vein or the nerves at the same time. And then there's some tingling. Usually you'll get to where now you can start feeling a tingling or a buzzing sensation in the skin, especially if it's in the extremities like the feet. The tuning fork, you should be able to feel the same thing. Even though you have the tuning fork on a person, start to be aware of what the tuning fork is doing. You can feel the straw brace through the straw. You can start to feel things bumping up against the bottom of the base of the tuning fork. You can actually feel it transfer itself right up through the tuning fork. So start to pay attention to what's happening there, especially if you're doing the butterfly. You're relying on the butterfly. So there's still a little bit of a sensing feedback mechanism. Visually, color changes are really good to see. You can visually see a deflation, especially if you don't have the sensing hand there. And then size and shape. You can start to see where there's a lump, a visible lump. You can actually see those lumps go down as well. When it comes to dislodging or moving, let's say, a vertebrae back into place, you can actually see those things start to move back into place if you can see the vertebrae from there. They will actually move from, I mean, I've probably moved her vertebrae a half an inch to go back in place, and you'll see it just slowly move, and all of a sudden, pop, just pop right back in place.
You straighten noses too, like that. Like a crooked nose.
How'd you do that?
Just all you have to do is put it on the side. So if the nose is kind of bending out this way, that's the side you're going to do. And you're just going to kind of put it right up against that bone and push. and you'll feel it, just go right back, you'll feel it move. So that's a good one for you, if you're gonna be doing lots of faces. And crooked fingers, you can straighten those.
It'll be painful.
You
When
do
you're-
it for years?
Yes. When you're working on calcium deposits, it's not bone. Even though we think calcium is bone, it's calcium deposits that are not wrapped in that casing that the bone is in. So the tuning forks can dissolve that or break away the
And if you have like little nodules or lumps or something on your knuckles, you can, this takes them right away. You just put it right on it and push.
and bone spurs as well.
Like a couple of those on my
Yep.
thumbs, I don't know why.
Yep, you can get rid of them. Like within a couple minutes, they'll be gone.
Really? I was playing around and it hasn't
But you
changed.
probably don't have enough, you probably won't put enough
Oh,
pressure.
probably not.
Breaking up calcium balls and calcium deposits is one of the most painful things that our clients go through.
And if it's too painful, again, you can wrap them. Even their hands, their fingers, you
So
know.
you could wrap it in.
Mhm.
And don't use the gem foot on those. They need maximum vibration in order. You're shaking the stuffings out
Your
of
cheeks
it.
are jiggly when you did that.
Well, I told you to.
Where does it go though? Do you have to worry about it like if it's
It just
breaking
gets
up?
absorbed. It gets absorbed back in your body. It's calcium.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it getting
Goes in the kidney stones.
Stuck somewhere else.
stuck somewhere else. My kidney stones or something, arteries and you stroke out or something.
No.
It's too. That's a valid question.
Actually, that's one of the most asked questions from clients. Where does it go?
It's too big. It's too big of a substance to get sucked back into the veins. And that's a valid point about. So let's talk about this for a minute. When things get into our interstitial space, so Derek gets stung by a jellyfish. Where does that venom go when it gets underneath the skin in the same interstitial space that we're talking about? That's sharing the fluids coming out of our arteries, going back into the veins, and then being pulled up by the lymphatic system. If it doesn't fit in those holes of the veins or the lymphatic system, where does it go? Good luck finding that answer. If it's too big to fit in it, or if the lymphatic system doesn't know what to do with it, it's toxic. It's toxins. Where does it go? For those of you that have extreme edema or enough edema to have open fluid spaces, guess what? It's going to fall right down to the bottom of the fish tank.
Yep,
And
that's
your
why
toxins
so
are
many
going
people
to your
have
feet.
neuropathy in their feet and the circulations and the problems with their feet because it's settled in their feet.
Or the fascia fibers have contained it and held on to it, and it's now stuck, quarantined inside of a fascial lump.
Why do people with diabetes have, why is neuropathy,
As they get
a
edema.
given?
Yeah. It's
Neuropathy is edema. Is
Yeah, it's
edema.
not
And
mine.
it can be related to like
That was she's doing the fork, that's.
You know, when
Yeah,
you're
that's what I
working.
thought.
Yeah, well, it is, but
That's
If
what
you
I
had
got.
something,
sometimes, I mean, it is,
she's working on,
but what's
she had her
damaging
finger
the
right on
valves?
there, she was using
The-
that.
Well, you could have a,
You have a chicken and egg there.
well, you
you-
could have an event that, you know, so you
Right.
could have a DVT or something like that that damaged the valves.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the DVT, you know, clears, but the valve is damaged and then.
But
you
what?
get-
But the reason the valve is damaged and the reason it's no longer operable or unfunctional is because of the inflammation around it that's compressing it. That's why it doesn't work. If you get rid of that, that valve is functional. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you get rid of what's making it stuck and not work, it will work.
It's definitely not functional if they go in and cauterize
Oh, well,
everything
no,
as
that's,
they're,
yeah,
as
medical,
they're
I
doing
just
the.
had that.
yeah.
You
And
did?
medical modifications, there's nothing you can do about those. You have people with their spines screwed together and fused together, you know,
Right.
you can't do anything with that.
Right.
All right, so we're down on the bottom of page 34. I wanted to talk to you about release So these release events that you're feeling, or that you will hopefully feel before you leave here this weekend, these releases can happen in one tuning fork strike replacement. It can. Small releases of things moving past your fingers. I'm talking about that. On a larger scale is somebody who couldn't move a limb or have range of motion at all, and now all of a sudden can. So there's big releases, there's small releases. It doesn't mean the work is done. It doesn't mean that you resolve something just because there was a release of fluids, or there was a release of the fascia letting go, or possibly dissolving altogether. So there's still more work to be done, even when there's a release. So release really means reassess. All right, so now that it's no longer here, I had release, where did all this stuff go? Is there another compartment outside of that? Reassess, reposition, keep working towards the goal. At some point, you should have your client get up and reassess things for range of motion. Where's your pain now? Do you still have pain? Release is not going to change their lifestyles or their habits, so you need to make sure that you're relieving their pain. We already talked about the fact that you should be having a talk with them about what are their lifestyles, things that they could change. We're going to see at the end of today that homework, giving them homework of things that they should be looking for, where she was talking about having that stretch with your leg up on the other leg and stretching. That's a very common thing that we give to somebody with lower back pain or that's having problems with mobility.
Somebody that sits a lot needs to stretch.
And then there's times where this is the release or the session that they're there for is just to get them moving in the right direction. It's good for you both to know in the goal of the session what you want to do, and now that you've reached it, what's the next step after that? Remember that if it's quality of life, if it's just getting them out of pain, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's permanent. It could, but if they have other things going on, then your client should leave with an understanding of what to expect. In most cases, we see clients where they have pain, we relieve their pain, they go about their way, and we see them about 3 months, like clockwork, because that's how long it takes for their habits to get all the way back up. And a lot of people that we see every day still don't come in. They have free session cards from us. They still don't come in because they're waiting for themselves to get back to the same condition of can't get out of bed. Because that's where we saw them the first time. Came in crutches and then left with no pain, and they're waiting to get back to that same level before they come in and see us. We don't know why that is,
Because they don't have to pay you.
but it's a free
It's
session.
session.
It's very weird, but sometimes we have that happen. And here's the biggest thing about feedback at the end of that session is, did it work? So you're going to end up getting this feedback mechanism that you should be aware of when you're asking and you're trying to find out, did that work? Did the work you just did on them in the last 5-10 minutes, did that work? At the end of the session, we feel that leaving 100% pain-free for that goal is the mark of success. Anything else, we would consider it a failure. We know that we can take away somebody's pain drastically in one session. So that's what we expect that your goal is as well. And one of the things that we would look at is knowing whether you reached your goal and then reassessing. Having them assess at the beginning of the session, check for range of motion, and that's really what you're going to do most of the time. Where's the pain? Where's your range of motion? How far can you move your neck? How far can you bend over and touch your toes? Oh, I haven't touched my toes in like 40 years. Well, guess what? They're probably going to touch their toes before they leave that session, and it's not going to be painful. That would be on the reassessment. That not only shows them that they have a range of motion and something's changed in them, and it gives them confidence that something's different. But it also tells you, the practitioner, that something's changed, that you were successful in what you were doing with pain and range of motion. You're gonna get some answers though, that you may consider success. They may be hidden failures. Things like, interesting. It's probably not something you wanna hear. That feels a little better. That's not 100% in my book, so 100% is, it's gone.
First session resolution.
First session resolution is what we're shooting for. It's something that's reachable. And remember that first session resolution, that if you know it's not going to be resolved in that first session, you don't set that session goal of something you can't reach. Set the expectation, reach that expectation. You know, it didn't get there overnight. We hear that a lot. That is usually a sign that they're not ready to leave your office yet. It didn't get there overnight. That means it's probably still
They
in
think
pain.
you did the best you could.
So show them that it can be taken away, not overnight, but within one session. They just don't have the confidence, so they don't know. That feels a lot better. That doesn't speak of it's gone. So that's not a word that, or a phrase that would mean that it's resolved. And you see the note underneath there, those are reactions that we consider that the VFR technique in that session at that time, it's a failure because you haven't gone all the way to 100% yet, which is something that is reachable. The way to get a good feedback from that client is asking a straight up question. Where is the pain now? Even after receiving any of these responses, just go right to that question. Okay, where's the pain now? They'll point to it because they just felt for it, they just reassessed. Oh, it's a little bit over. That's what you're going to see. You're going to get the feedback. They're going to point to it. It's right over here. Okay, lay back down on the bed. Let's take care of that. Just keep going. And keep doing that. The reassess. Okay, where's the pain now? And just keep working on it. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah, I saw that a lot at the last course. It blew me away because it's like, she really got him back on the table, and until they were done. So it's like, it was impressive because I didn't see anything like that before for a while. I don't think I've ever seen it. So it was really cool to see, oh, okay, we're really, really going for it.
Yeah, the people that are coming in tomorrow and Sunday, there's no reason they should leave in pain. We're gonna take care of them. When they get up off the table, if they say it still hurts, we're gonna put them back on the table
And
until it's gone.
I don't think I would have known how to do that with my clients until I saw it. Like, I didn't, because I didn't believe it could happen. I mean, until I actually saw, oh wow, yeah, you could do this. So
If you have 45-minute sessions and you wait until 40 minutes into the session to have your client get back off of the bed and reassess, how much time do you have to say, where's the pain now, if you get any of these answers?
You
don't
should
have
be
much
doing
time
it
to go.
probably at least by 15 minutes. You should have them, show me where it hurts now, or does it still hurt now, whatever. Yeah, I would say after 15 minutes, you should be somewhere.
And you'll be surprised that after 15 minutes,
I
when
can
they get up and
almost-
reassess, a lot of times you'll know just by feel when that thing releases. Over experience and over time, you'll feel something release and you're like, that was it. I know,
Yeah.
drop the fork.
Even if it's been 2
And-
minutes, okay, get up and see how that feels.
Probably the most bizarre would be like doing 5 minutes and 3 placements on this postage stamp
Yep.
in the lower back and say, all right, now test that out.
That's been
You
numerous
see complete
times.
shock on a client's face, they're like, what? And get up, go check it out. And they'll get up
You've
and
had this pain for 20 years and you fixed it in 2 minutes.
like, all right, what's next? Still shocked, walking out of the office going, completely shocked. And it never comes back.
Do you
In
stop
those-
the session
in-
there, or you keep working on something else for the other 43 minutes?
Well, so most of the time they'll be like, well, do we have time to do something? Yeah, they'll get out their list.
But you've
Yeah.
reached their goal. From that point forward, it's just,
So you
And
don't
that-
have to. I mean, if they're there for you to work on their frozen shoulder and you fix it in 5 minutes, you don't have to. You could say the session's over, or you could give them the time. So I guess it depends on if you're charging for the time or if you're charging for your services, for you to get rid of their condition.
and it's really up to you because it can get out of hand if you decide to continue working and give them 45 minutes of your time in exchange for their money. But that can tend to get a little bit out of hand, especially if you start to fill up your schedule and you need that time.
Mary Ruth.
It's a constant, we call them laundry list clients. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're the one that sets the session. That's why we put this setting the goal ahead of time, so that they know. In fact, when we move from one location to another, we completely drop the fact that your session is 45 minutes. A lot of times our clients will ask when they call on the phone, how long is the session? It's not a massage.
Right.
It is, you're coming in for pain. What doctor do you go to when you get into that doctor and you say, here's my problem? They hand you a prescription and send you on your way. Do you ever stop at that doctor and say, did I have a 45
I
minute?
have 30 minutes left.
Yeah. Do you have?
Have you ever done that?
Right, no.
Maybe. I was in the Navy around the time that they started sending a lot of the doctors over to the Gulf War. So there was just left with just a certain number of really, really old doctors that didn't want to have their own practice anymore. So they were at a Navy installation. And we had this sign in the waiting room because our families were seen there too on base. And the sign says, we can only, during your visit, we can only work on one old condition and one new condition. That was bizarre. So I say,
That's a good one.
one old and one new. I don't know.
I have to
That's
get a
what we
sign made for my office. I just
So you
went,
could charge for like, just that, you don't specify the time, you say, okay, we're going to address your back pain,
right.
your sciatica.
You don't even have to set
Cost you
your,
$50.
right,
and
you don't
then
even have
2
to set
minutes,
your session
you're done.
time at all. Like, you don't have to say, my sessions are 45 minutes. Don't even do that.
Right.
Just say, okay, this session is for your shoulder. This is a shoulder session, not this is a 45-minute session.
And for scheduling purposes, therefore, you're going to have to schedule a time.
Sure.
But, and sometimes just putting it on your marketing material, you may have to put, so many dollars for a 45-minute session. And we did that before. It's kind of hard not to put it on there. Because the person's going to want to know if they get the full session, how much time out of my life, because I have to reschedule my life around that session as well. So they may need to know that.
Is it ever not resolved in 45 minutes?
The only time that it is kind of like a therapy thing, like with ongoing allergies or things like that. But if it's pain, they're not leaving my office in pain.
Pain is easier to resolve than mobility. And-
Neuropathy sometimes is a little bit of a therapy because they may need more than 1 or 2 sessions, more than a few sessions. But yeah, most of it is, and everything, all the anti-aging, fat burning stuff is all like one session. You can get rid of a double chin in one session.
Is there ever too many, if you're getting great results and they've got their laundry list and you're just like not checking these things off, is there ever too much, like for the body to handle?
No.
Releasing? No.
I had somebody come in every single day for weeks, and I worked on her face.
How about like in a day, in a single session?
In a day, sometimes she would get double sessions.
So 90 minutes?
Yeah, or sometimes she would come in the morning and then come back in the afternoon and then get a session. But she would get 2 sessions. I think a couple times she got 3.
But there has to be some logic to it. If there's an extreme edema client, or there's somebody with neuropathy, and you're pushing toxins and fluids
Yeah.
out of one compartment into another, you need the body's time to give the body time to process the toxins. So, you know, you don't wanna push too much out and then come in an hour later or the next day. Sometimes you need to give them rest and let them rest, let them move.
Not
Get their
only
body
is it
moving.
toxins, but if you've got something that's been quarantined into a knot or something, a spot, of course you've got the toxins, whatever your body tried to quarantine there. But you also have all your own stuff, melatonin, serotonin, all the chemicals your body produces, they're in there too. So when you let go of that, it's really letting go of a lot of stuff.
And that is where I think a lot of that vibration you were talking about earlier, you can imagine your body now gets chemicals that shouldn't be released at the same time, in the same way.
Right, like
but
the
they-
ones to wake you up and the ones to go to sleep, you know? But they're both there, and you're dealing with all
Well,
kinds of
it's
stuff.
interesting, she said, I mean, she was up till 3 a.m., like just feeling like, you know, didn't feel tired, but
Yeah.
felt like, you know,
Her body's
she'd be
a,
in bed by 10. So.
Mhm.
her body's a cornucopia of drugs just going, oh, I should
Have some cortisol, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's hard to say exactly which one of the things inside of that person's body is causing that. Could be all kinds of things. When we have substances that are released in our body through our bloodstream, have you ever heard of the fact that the bloodstream only deposits things in certain areas? No, it's a all or nothing. When it's in the bloodstream,
She said she'd had brain fog for about a month and a half, and it went
yep.
as well. So it's kind of now she can suddenly have clarity again, and she's been really struggling just to do basic. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
This was what kind of client?
She had fibro diagnosed, but I don't think it was. That was my view, but it was something. She had some kind of autoimmune response. But
Mhm.
she had all sorts, like her hands were clawed, a big lump in her neck. She couldn't neuropathy of her feet.
You know what I've been finding? A lot of people with fibromyalgia, like probably 95% of the people that say they have fibromyalgia have tattoos.
Don't tell me that. A number of people keep telling me, do you know what's in your body now? I'm like, yeah.
Mhm.
But I'm vibrating so strongly, it's fine.
And they're finding it in
Knock
people's
that out.
lymphatic system, it's quarantined because
Mhm.
your body doesn't know what to do with it.
Hey, half of them were vegan tattoos, so didn't have a lot of it.
There you go, vegetable.
So what did you do
They
to
make
reduce
them
the
with
brain
cows.
fog?
I think it was in the neck. I think she had
You
this
mean a
lump in her
vegan
neck.
gave you a tattoo, so it's good?
Yeah.
vegan tattoo.
It was vegan ink and bio-vegan.
Nice.
So it had none of the, you know,
Well, then your body probably processed
additives
it,
or
yeah.
metal, you know, it was all as clean as it could be.
Mhm.
Oh, I gotta think you remember the rest for next time.
Vegan tattoo. Or,
Vegan
awesome.
It's only in Los Angeles now.
He had to put it on though with a stick and a metal.
Yeah, but don't get one of those. That's so
Scribed it?
painful.
Like Fred Flintstone?
Yeah. Like a,
Chiseled
like
it
a
in?
prison tattoo.
Don't get one of those. They're too painful. I had a friend who went to Bali and they do it with a needle and they
Yeah.
started and like 20 minutes in was just like stop.
Oh,
It's got this little
man.
blue blob. It's like,
Let's stab you 1,000
Do you guys
times
have
at the same
tattoos?
spot.
Do you have tattoos? We don't either.
I met a guy that used to have
You
one
have
of
tattoos.
his girlfriends on his, like on his chest or somewhere, and he married, and the lady says, you gotta get rid of it. So instead of paying to get it off, he, like he used to have a void stamp on checks. He
Yeah.
had a tattoo of a void stamp on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
a lot of people just do it all black.
Yeah.
It's like super painful.
Or a circle with
Just
a.
in a circle of the line.
Yeah, circle line.
Crossover.
I think I was the only sailor in history that ever made it through the Navy and retired. That didn't have a tattoo, didn't drink coffee, and didn't have a child in every port.
Yeah, my dad has no tattoos. He was also a 25-year veteran. Probably did the other two.
Well, if you had a child at every port, you probably deserve a tattoo.
So you can remember your children's name.
Right.
All right, press and push. This is another one of ours, getting closer to the 10. This is number 8, press and push with the hands. So we've talked about this before. The press and push is just a way for you to press down on large areas of fluid so we can move them out. It can be areas like this. It can be large regions. It could be entire portions of the body. So we're really moving the interstitial fluids that may have been compartmentalized. One of the biggest things is it reduces session times. So those 90-minute sessions that Bobby Joe was doing, The reason is because it took that long for that fluid to just kind of make their way out of these compartmentalized spaces. Until she started realizing that if she presses her hands down, and just kind of moved it out and pushed it out of the way, that the thing she was really looking for was underneath the fluids. So a lot of times your vibration, like I talked about before, the vibrations can't get below the fluids because it spreads out, but you also can't sense it. You also can't get the initial palpation to find that the problem is really underneath it. Something that tends to happen is I'm a fascial lump right here. Then movement's happening, and I'm rubbing tissue with this fascial lump, and as I move around, this thing is just sitting in there and just grinding at all your tissue and causing more inflammation. Constant inflammatory response. More fluids are coming to the aid. Next thing you know, you're just filling up this little fluid bag of stuff. There's probably something right in the middle of it. A core, a lump of some sort. We find that certain things like what are they called? The lipomas,
Yeah.
cysts, things that are in your body that are big lumps of fatty tissue, that those have a core to them. And if you don't move the core out of there, it will start to come back again. Page 93 is what I'm talking about. Baker cysts, all kinds of things where there's just one big old lump of stuff.
It's
on
more
page-
fun to hit them with a book, you know?
Is that a method?
Yes, it is. They used to
Book
call
'em,
them
Dana.
Bible. They used to use the family Bible. Yeah. Whack them on a,
Honey,
Why, because it was a devil?
book 'em, Dano.
Is that right? Because
Jeez, Daniel.
a friend of mine's got a big thing on her ankle that's like that. I just want to whack her with a book. Is that what I was saying?
I
Yeah,
think
you
I
should
could
do
do
that.
that work.
Then use the tuning fork. Do the book.
Yeah, after she slaps you
Yeah.
for hitting her with a book.
30-second session that way.
We talked about the toxin containment, the quarantine, that sometimes your fluid isn't spread out over large areas, but those lumps and bumps could be that fascia that kind of wrapped itself around something that it thought it needed to quarantine. Using proper pressure. So when you're why don't you
Won't you
work on me? Why don't you work on me? Huh? On your own? Please? Abracadabra?
I like the way that whole.
Does anybody have like
whole
a
thing-
lymph node that they can feel in their arm, in their armpit? So what do we do? Oh, you can show them. You get 2 shirts on?
Yeah.
Push it out. It's hard to do because he's all sweaty and drunk. But push it over the shoulder. I can't do it to you.
Okay.
I do it to somebody else. You're all sweaty. No.
She just make the who farted face. Yeah.
Here,
So-
Nancy.
Bear skin is probably one of the best if you possibly can. If you start to do what she was just doing on me, depending on how much fabric softener you use, it could be like scraping sandpaper. I'll move over here. You go there. It's like moving
Get face this
sandpaper
way so
across
they
your
can see
skin.
your back. There you go.
So if it's possible to have bare skin, then it makes your hand slide a little bit more. Now, Paul worked on this lady, BJ, is that what her name was? When he was here last, she had this huge hump across her back. She had a hunchback.
You can see what I'm
They call,
pushing up
they
here.
call them
I
hunchback.
don't want to show you
not
her back too much, but look,
That's okay.
you can actually see and feel what I'm pushing. And you can feel that it's gone now, right where my hand was. So right there, that was where it's all gone now. And push it right over the shoulder. You can feel the fluid. You can actually feel it moving inside of your
Very.
fingers. Now feel how loose that is and how tight that is.
Well, no, I mean,
Feel the difference?
there's discomfort, but I have a pretty
Oh
good
my goodness.
high
Well,
So try it. Just put your fingers like here and just go up like that, and you can actually feel stuff. You're gonna feel push stuff that you're pushing.
Do you need
Really
one of
press in there. Get in there.
Let her shirt go
If her shirts then you probably just need to do this.
how's it going there, Nancy?
well, it's not, it doesn't feel very hard, it doesn't feel like anything.
Okay, harder?
Yeah, doesn't feel like anything is really moving.
You're gonna have to probably have to move her shirt up to do it. I mean, actually, the shirt will have to move with it.
Oh.
How's
So
that?
do you use just the fingers or do
Now
you
I
use
get
the palm
it.
too?
No, I just use the fingers, so. I'm gonna get it when you're like this.
Okay. Oh, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah. And then you're just going
So
to.
we're removing the tissue, or
What's under
Fluid
just
that's
what's
under
under
I
it.
can feel the
Ah.
fluid.
under it. Yeah, I can
Feel it?
fluid.
I
Which
can feel the
technically,
fluid.
that is the
Yeah.
terminology.
Feel
for
it.
Feel
tissue.
it?
Just moving the
Yeah.
whole layer.
Rather than
It's
just
more
getting
like-
it
it's
to
kind of
come
like
through
massage,
it, you would call that.
You're just moving it out.
It is the thought, when you push the thought
Yeah,
that we're pushing.
exactly.
So that loosen it up some?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I could feel it moving.
job.
That's what I had, one of my specialties when I was a massage therapist.
It's a nice job.
No, it's all coming back.
I
I was
think
gonna
it
say, I don't hardly feel your fingers. So it's gentle, it's great. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for allowing me to learn something.
But lost a few people.
I know what happened. Time to go.
They
isn't
went
it?
for more cake.
Another cake break.
One of the things to keep in mind when you press down on the skin, especially if it's kind of edema. So this is actually the tissue from Jack, our edema client that we see every week. So pressing down, you notice that there is. Can you see the in your book? Can you see the indentation? There's fluid under there, a lot of fluid. That is not the extreme part of his leg. When you push through, we're going to show you pictures of his legs where when you're pushing through those, if you have your fingers down enough and you start pushing it this way, the fluid that pushes through, there's actually ridges. You create troughs in this person's leg. And I would imagine that when we start working on your leg, the same thing will be happening. Where you're moving fluids in front of your fingers, but then the fluid or the stuff in between will actually stay there and not move at all.
Do you ever do that kind of work on cellulite? Not cellulitis, but cellulite?
No, because that really our fat burning part of it with the tuning forks is really, I mean, cellulite to us is just fat cells that have gotten a little bit too large
Okay.
or overfilled, and then the bumps. That's what you're talking about.
Sure, right.
It is the same exact thing. It's the fat burning part of it where the tuning forks can start to relieve some of those lipids that are in there, the triglyceride lipids, and start to release it and shake it out. So it'll actually start to drain. And then the fluids that are around it, we can push those out. So if you wanted to not necessarily do a fat burning session, probably what I would say with cellulite is to wrap them, mount them, wrap them, tuning forks on top of the plastic, and then do a push if you need to. I would suspect that a person who's had cellulite for quite a bit of time, that they could end up having edema around the cellulite. Because
That's exactly what
it is
it is.
localized edema.
It's edema where the fat deposits are kind of like on top of it. And it gets all, it's uneven and it just gets all bumped, and that's why it looks like that. Cottage cheese looking. Yep, you can push it right out.
So we used to think
So you can
this,
correct it?
yes,
Which one are you talking?
It just didn't get deposited, so it's just uneven. It didn't get, all the way deposited like it should have.
it used to be a known fact, a well-known fact, that you couldn't get rid of cellulite. It was there for forever. Because when you use weight loss techniques of the past, you allowed the body to determine where it was going to use its fat, which adipose bubble is it going to draw from if it needed it. So we never could control where in our body our fat was going to be pushed out, or the triglycerides were going to be pushed out. We can with the tuning forks, because you are working directly on individual cells at a cellular level. Those triglycerides will actually start to vibrate out. And you'll know it too, again, in about 30 minutes after the session, they'll start to expel.
In other words, you're gonna poop it out.
And they'll see yellow
When you do fat burning
fluids.
sessions,
They'll be full of triglycerides, for sure. So if this was a fatty area that had fat cells in them, and I have pictures when we get into that part of it for the fat burning part. So we got all of these adipose cells that have triglyceride fluids in there. Each one of them has their own little controller cell, the brain of each cell. That when people have cellulite, those cells end up getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They just keep filling up, filling up, filling up. If you get enough of them big enough, we only have so many fat cells in our body. If they get filled up too much, what that does is end up triggering the body to create more fat cells. It basically petitions the body to say, I need some more. I don't have enough room for what I have now. It's coming at me. It'll actually commission and create more fat cells. When those get filled up, that's how when we get really, really, really obese and then start to lose weight, it's very difficult to maintain that weight after you've been so obese. That's because you may have twice as many fat cells in your body now. But here's the thing, when we drain these, whatever method, whether it's tuning forks, normal weight loss, when we drain these, fat cells don't disappear. Fat cells are actually a specialized fascial cell. It is kind of like the fasciocytes. They're all in the same, or the fasciocytes. They're all in the same area. They are part of your fascial network. They coexist with these collagen fibers and the fluids and all of that other stuff. It is part of the same tissue. We think of them as separate because some people call this the adipose layer. The layer we're talking about, the interstitial extracellular layer, it's sometimes called the adipose layer because the fat cells live in the same layer. They coexist.
So if a person gets liposuction and they remove a bunch of fat cells, then the body goes, oh, we need to replace those?
Probably. Your body's probably more concerned with the fact that you ripped the entire structure out with it through the collagen fibers. You now have fascial, what it's going to replace is the fascia has to come through and relay all of the network through that suctioned area. It has to now reweave itself, and it's probably not going to do it in the manner that you want it.
liposuction is probably not very good for you.
That's what it sounds
It
like.
probably creates more problems.
We get enough trauma underneath our skin just bumping into the table on the way to the kitchen. Can you imagine what you're doing when you're sucking fascial stuff out? There's some serious scarring happening.
Seriously, ugh.
A couple things to think about when we're doing this press and push is when you press down, especially to where there's a little bit of fluid, when you press down, you want to press down and then let the fingers sink in. Let the fingers sink.
You'll feel it.
So give a little pressure, but don't move yet. Let it sink. Then start moving forward, but you have to move forward slowly. Because if you move too fast, you're going to roll right over what you're pushing. It is letting the fascia fibers move out of the way or release. It's almost like shoveling snow when the snow in front of it's too heavy and you get caught. If you shovel too fast, now you shovel right up over the stuff that's at the bottom. We don't want to push over what we're pushing through. What you'll feel is if you go slow enough, just put a little bit of pressure on it, and then you'll feel everything give way.
Your hands move by themselves. So if you just kind of put a little bit of a slant to it or a tilt to it, and just push down in there, your fingers will actually move on their own as it gives way under your fingers. So you don't even have to really push. You just push down, and your fingers will go by themselves. As long as you've got a little bit of a slant where that's where the direction that they're gonna go.
And lock, if you're pushing like a lot, like what Paul was doing with the haunch back, where you started in the middle of the back and push like this. A lot of times if you don't lock your elbows, it's going to be very difficult to maintain that pressure all the way through, and you'll be shaking by the end. Probably the biggest thing here to remember though, especially if you're moving fluids from the back, is not to stop the fluid right here. You're already pressurized enough right here, and I guarantee if you're moving fluids from the back to the front and you stop right here, your client's not going to like it very much. It'll be extremely painful. Stopping right here is just going to overpressurize. You're moving fluids into another space that's already overpressurized.
You can do this.
It'll hurt. As soon as you take your hands off of it, give them about 5-10 minutes. They'll be letting you know. It's going to hurt. You have to move it. You have to move it into the safe zone on page 37.
Which I guess is the loop that we were talking about.
Chicago.
Okay? Move it into the safe zone.
Yeah.
No, you don't want to be there after dark, let me tell you. So in that safe zone, we're talking about that clavicle again. So the interstitial space that you're dealing with is on the outside of the rib cage, but up and over that clavicle, getting it into the space inside of your rib cage. That's what we consider the safe zone. We have all of these
Well, is that just because there's a lot of space in there, or?
There's a lot more space than there is on the outside. Plus, on the inside is where the subclavian vein is at. That ends up being the last space where the lymphatic ducts, the thoracic duct and the other lymphatic ducts end up exchanging its fluids back into the cardiovascular space. Because what gets into the interstitial space gets cleaned, brought back up, and put back into your cardiovascular system to maintain your volume pressure.
Just the main drainage area then.
It's a transfer area of the cleaned plasma and the interstitial fluid, and it puts it back in. It's kind of like your sump pump, or your I think your oil. There's certain parts of, I think, certain engines. I think some cars do that, where there's collection in the bottom part and it pumps it back up.
Race cars have like a pump on the bottom, so, cornering and stuff, an oil pump is called a sump.
And it keeps the pressure.
Yeah, it keeps the pressure up, when you're cornering hard and stuff like that.
I think we have some pictures on the next page. These are two pictures. Both of them are showing the fact that there's the subclavian vein. The right lymphatic duct returns the lymph to the venous system in the upper right quadrant, and the thoracic duct returns lymph from almost all parts of the body and what would be her right side. Okay? So what we're doing is we're just putting our fluid, since we have it collected over here, we're moving it into another zone. But if we're already up there, working on the head, working on the back, if we're up in this area, get it to where it can do some good. It does no good for that interstitial space to have too much fluid on the outside when you can get it up over there where it can have interstitial, or have some help on the inside. Now that's a lot of fluid though, and there's enough space on the inside for you to be able to push that fluid up over that clavicle. You'll know if you don't get it up over that clavicle. You'll start to create these little pressurized areas, and it'll start to feel not so good. That would mean right here as well, pushing it up over here. If you're gonna get it up into the shoulder area, make it all the way to the safe zone. Get it underneath here so that your body can deal with it. What will happen is, it's so close to the subclavian vein anyways, that the first area that can pick that fluid back up only has about this far to go, and it'll go into the next lymph node. It'll be cleaned by the next lymph node and put right into the subclavian vein. So it's already where the party happens, up here. So you're just putting the fluid where it can be cleaned and recycled. Any questions on that part? You guys will be able to practice it, actually do that throughout the next couple of days. You'll most likely be doing it for the first time tomorrow morning, early tomorrow morning.
So if you have cancer, if you have a cancer cell in your lymph node, why couldn't you use a tuning fork to try to bust up that cell? Or is that just way off the chart?
Some people believe, and this could be true, that if you have cancerous cells and that whatever inside that cancer cell
Mm-hmm.
breaks open, then you have, you start to spread it. It could spread. Especially, the biggest spreading is spreading through the lymph system. So there is that concern. It's hard for us to say, yeah, go ahead and do it.
I know. I'm just,
And we
Just
do
a
think
question.
that a tuning fork on top of a cancerous tumor could break it open. Absolutely. There's research
Find it out.
about sound waves breaking open
yeah.
cancer cells all the time.
So then that would spread it, is that what you're saying?
You don't
It
know.
depends on the type of cancer. Sometimes I read in the books where, no, you don't want to do it because if it gets too close to this, to the lymphatic system, it'll spread throughout the entire body. But yet people are doing the research on it and doing things with cancer cells all the time to bust it open.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you to do it. I wouldn't tell you to do it.
I personally think I'd
Little
give it a
angel on
shot
my
before I
shoulder that
would let
whispers
him.
in my ear tells me that the only reason that cancer even exists is because of all of this pressure has got your cells compressed, and they're still trying to do what cells do, reproduce,
Mhm.
and they can't do it the right way, so they're abnormal. And they just keep reproducing those abnormal
Abnormal
cells because they can't produce them normally. So, yeah, I think a tuning fork would do it.
I'd go there first before I'd let
I'd
him do
try
what
it.
they do.
Well, we know that a non-cancerous tumor, we
Sure.
can reduce it in minutes
Mhm.
under the cell. It's the same process. There's nothing that's showing us that it wouldn't be able to do that to a cancer cell. The only thing different between a cancer cell and a tumor is that it's actually harder because the collagen fibers continue to wrap themselves around like saran wrap.
Mhm.
And that's why cancer cells are so hard on the outside. It's because there's more collagen wrapping around it than any other cell.
And they also get like clusters of them.
Right.
Which is what would happen if your body quarantined that into one spot.
Mhm.
You would get, your cells would still keep trying to reproduce, so you get clusters in there of cancerous cells.
This Helene Langevin that I told you about that studies these things and learned about the fascia surrounding it, she actually says that they kind of feed on each other. The fact that the collagen fibers surround and quarantine that tumor is actually helping the tumor. It's exactly what it needed. It needed to be, had a moat around it, because she believes through research that cancer cells feed off of unresolved scarring and dead cell tissue. You can't remove that from an area, then you're more likely to get a tumor that feeds off of the death of other cells. So by quarantining it so that the stuff that's supposed to kill it can't get to it, that's exactly what it needs.
It's actually
Yeah.
causing protection for it.
And, what they're looking at is the fact that if they can just starve it and its feeding mechanism, they can cut off its food supply.
Her whole concept that, she says that, if that quarantined area is like busted open or compromised in any way, then whatever it is that you have that can attack that cancer now can get it.
Plus,
Now
that-
we take care of it.
and most of the alternative medicine healers that have come out and said, hey, I got the cure for cancer. Who knows how long they're gonna be around.
Yeah,
I don't know if
right.
you
So
will
we
ever hear
cannot
us say,
cure cancer.
"Hey, we got it. Attorney Fork, 128, come
Yeah,
see us.
That oncologist in New York died.
Like suicide.
Our address is
Every
209,
one of them.
east, west.
Yeah, you don't mess with cancer. That's
Yeah,
one thing Big Pharma don't let you mess with is cancer.
I don't know if we would even want to be on the research team for that. With Attorney Forks.
So is it a
Just a thought.
contraindication that you don't do people with cancer?
Oh, no, I do. I'll work on you if you get cancer.
But that's different than trying to bust open a cancerous tumor. You stay away from the cancerous tumor, and it's not like you're trying to just get on top of it and bust it open.
But
That's
then
different
again,
than,
how many people have cancer that you don't know about that you're working on? So,
35 to 40%.
probably.
cancer,
Yeah.
people with cancer still
You're
have
probably
bad
right.
backs, they still have pain in their lower back, and they still probably have edema, and
Right.
that's what we're working on.
Mhm.
Number 9, 10-foot slide. We're really just replacing the ability to do press and push using tuning forks. Already shown
Sometimes it's necessary. Up here in the face and neck and head, it's necessary.
15 millimeter crystal, 10 foot. 25 millimeter crystal, 10 foot. We haven't had this that long, we just started using it, and personally I feel that this is better for moving fluids and less painful. To do the sinus session that we do with this crystal foot, especially along the side here, and trying to get it across these muscle groups in the front, is a little more painful than spreading out the tension you have on the space and moving more fluids, moving it
Big
across the
difference
same way.
between those two.
This is where it's really hard to get fluid over these muscle groups that are coming across this way, because you're almost perpendicular to the muscle when you're pushing across. So it's going to get more fluid in front of it. So it's a good solution to use a 10 foot like this. We don't like the weight that it has. That's probably the only downfall. So it's striking it, you're going to have a little bit of vibration, but you may find that after the vibration dies out, you're still pushing fluid, and that's fine. It really ends up replacing your fingers. It's really going to be really difficult if you're trying to move fluid in the legs. It's kind of almost impossible to accomplish what we would accomplish with our hands using this for edema in the extremities.
Where do you drain the leg? Obviously not all the way up to the clavicle, or do you?
You move it into the next area. So if you consider, at a minimum, you have your own interstitial areas here, folds. So obviously the knee, get it up over the knee. If I'm down here,
If you're in the thigh, up to the groin area?
get it up past the groin area. We are going to go through and map where we are finding most of the natural fascia interstitial areas, because we are starting to see patterns where you can have an area right here that is not part of this. So we see pockets of fluids in most people just by the way that they sleep, by the way that they sit. That tends to happen over and over again. So we're going to start mapping those out and have like a fascial map or an interstitial fluid map, where if you're right here, the best place to move it is in this area or this area. For now, move it to the next, past the next joint. And it's good to know, with the pictures in here, it's good to know where the groupings of lymph nodes are, because those are part of the natural